Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Jane Sassine, and I run the McGraw Fellowship for Business Journalism out of the Newmark Graduate School of Journalism in New York. And we fund grants for economic and business-oriented stories. So I'm really happy to do this panel because I think this is it's such great and useful information for people to have when you're looking for money or looking to get a grant. So let me introduce the panelists. We first have Bo-Young Lim, who is a senior editor at the Pulitzer Center for Crisis Reporting. She was formerly a reporter at the Korea Center for Investigative Journalism, and she's a member of the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ICIJ. She herself has done stories on human rights violations, illicit financial flows, tax injustice, and the medical device industry. And before becoming a journalist, this is something you don't see often in people's CVs. Bo-Young worked as a police officer with a focus on cybercrime. And she's going to be talking with Shirley Abraham, who is a documentary filmmaker from India on a project that the Pulitzer Center supported of Shirley's. Her work has been supported by the Sundance Institute, the MacArthur Foundation, the New York Times, and the Guardian, among others. The first film she co-directed, which was called The Cinema Travelers, was an official selection at the Cannes Film Festival in 2016 and won the Special Jury Prize for documentaries. And today we're going to be talking about her project, The Hour of Lynching. And then from the Fund for Investigative Journalism, we have Cheryl Thompson, who is an investigative correspondent with NPR. Prior to NPR, joining NPR in 2019, she worked for over 20 years for the Washington Post, where she wrote extensively about law enforcement, political corruption, and guns. And she was a White House correspondent during Barack Obama's first term. Her work has been recognized by an Emmy, a Pulitzer, or maybe two, I think I might have seen in your CV.
Shared.
Two?
Shared.
Shared. Still good. Still, you'll take what, very, very good at however many people were involved. And a lot of other, too many other awards to mention. She, for 3 years, was the board president of Investigative Reporters and Editors. She's a vice president of the Fund for Investigative Journalism. And she also teaches investigative journalism at George Washington University. So welcome, Cheryl. Joe Stevens is also here from the Fund for Investigative Journalism. He's the founding director of the program in journalism at Princeton University and a Ferris Professor of Journalism in Residence. He was a longtime staff writer at the Washington Post, where he wrote extensively on political corruption, the war on terrorism, federal judiciary, and drug experiments conducted on children in the developing world. He's a 3-time winner of the George Polk Award and also a 3-time finalist for the Pulitzer, among also many other awards. And he too is also on the board of FIJ. And they're going to be talking about a film, Waiting for Tiara, that Juliana Schatz made. She is a Colombian-American documentary film producer and director. Her directorial debut, Los Comandos, was shortlisted for 2019 Academy Award and was a nominee for the 2018 International Documentary Award. And she was nominated for a Livingston Award for the film too. That's an award for young journalists. So we're going to talk today about her film, Waiting for Tiara. So obviously, great panel, lots of great work. So Bo-Young, why don't you start and let's talk a little bit first generally about what the Pulitzer Center looks for when you're looking at proposals. What are the key, what's your mission, what you look for?
Thank you so much, Jane. Hello, everyone. I'm Bo-Young Lim. I'm honored and excited to participate again at the Double Exposure. So let me just talk a little bit about what we do at the Pulitzer Center and what we're looking for. We are a nonprofit journalism and education organization, and we are based in Washington, D.C., but we have staff members all over the world, and we work with journalists and educators from all over the world. We work to support journalism and education for the public good. Each year, we support more than 170 reporting projects from freelancers, independent filmmakers, and newsrooms on underreported issues of global importance. And we try to highlight these good reporting in our education and outreach programming. So a quick overview of our grant is that it's on a rolling basis. You can pitch to us anytime you are ready. And we cover the hard cost of reporting, which means transportation costs, FOIA requests, or data analysis types of things. So we are looking for stories that are underreported, overlooked by the mainstream media, that takes a systemic view into the deep-rooted issues all over the world. So Jane, if you could put up the do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
I have a little cheat sheet for you, everyone. We have 3 do's and 3 don'ts, things to consider when you are applying for a Pulitzer Center grant. So we would like for you to show us your pre-reporting and explain like why the story matters and what makes your approach stand out from other previous coverage of the issue. And we also want to know why you are the person to tell the story. If you include strong work samples or show us your track record on covering this issue, that makes your proposal all the more competitive. And also tell us what access you have to sources and what expertise you have. Also, we love to see journalists and filmmakers think ahead of time about the distribution of their stories. So if you do have a commission from an outlet or letters of interest from outlets that you work with, please show us. And we really love to see multi-platform strategies where you have different types of medium, like you have a documentary film, you have a written story, or you have different language media outlets on board. There are also red flags that we see often in the proposals we receive that overlook feasibility. For example, you've never been to North Korea, but you're saying that you will go to North Korea and report on something that is unlikely to happen. If you don't have experience covering something and you say you will get a visa without any hard proof, like we don't think that's a very feasible plan. Also, we like to see journalists and filmmakers do their homework. If you go to our website, you can see all the past projects that we've supported and try to avoid duplication. If we've already supported a story that you're thinking about, try to find a different angle that stands out. And finally, this is one of the many red flags, but a lot of people tend to not share a detailed budget plan. We would like to see what you have in mind for where you plan to use the money for your reporting. So it could be FOIA fees, translations, data visualization, travel, and lodging. But just make sure that those are also based on your pre-reporting and research before you go out on the field. So that's from me. And I think Shirley can talk more about the proposal that she successfully sent to us. And yeah, I'll stop here.
Okay, that's great. So actually, there's one quick question I wanted to ask, because I know I get asked this a lot, and if you can address it, and then Shirley, when you talk about how you put your proposal together from your perspective, which is when you talk about show your pre-reporting, obviously it's a subjective thing, but people always ask me like, well, how much reporting do I have to do? You sometimes get proposals where you feel like there's been almost no reporting done. And then other times you get proposals where it feels like, well, they've already reported the whole thing out. What do they really need us for at this point? Can you talk a little bit about how you advise people on how much you need in order to be able to go ahead with something?
Sure, that's a really helpful question, Jane. I would say that you should have enough to show that you have an hypothesis and you have a lead that would, when you go out in the field or you check the data, that you would know what your minimum story would be and a maximum story would be. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to show us that even if things go wrong, your minimum story would be able to prove this hypothesis. That's the standard that I would use.
You'll come back with something even if you don't get all the way to what you hope for. Okay, that's great. All right, let me take this down. And Yeah, so Shirley, you want to talk a little bit, maybe first just describe briefly your project and then talk a little bit about how you as you got into the idea, where the idea came from and what point you just realized you needed funding and how you developed the proposal.
Thanks, Jane. Hi, hello to everyone who's joined in. My name is Shirley Abraham, and I work as a documentary filmmaker in India. And I've been working for more than a decade, and I think I've gotten enough rejections from grants that I now know that it is not about me and it is not about my self-esteem. And I no longer link it to my sense of self-worth, but it's not been very easy. I think I will try and demystify some of the things that go into writing grant proposals and rewriting them essentially. So today I'm going to be speaking about this film that I made with my co-director Amit Madheshiya. The film is called The Hour of Lynching. I'll quickly speak about what made us want to make this film and take you through the process of pitching the film to Pulitzer Center. There were other funders that came on board, and I think as I take you through the process real quick, you'll probably just get a sense of the universe of pitching these films. I normally work as a feature filmmaker. I mean, I make feature-length documentaries, but since we've had Narendra Modi as this Hindu nationalist prime minister take over in India, we've had essentially the social and the democratic fabric of the country has changed so much and for the worse that filmmakers like us have felt the need to respond urgently to these political moments of our times, and hence the short form. It does help us turn around a response quicker, or at least that's what we hope. But of course, the funding process is it's long and it's non-linear and it's frequently agonizing. Yeah, so we'll go back to I think about 2018. That was when we were talking about we had started witnessing a peculiar form of violence in India, which was the mob lynchings of Muslims, and Muslims are in a minority in India. And we saw that, there were these Hindu vigilantes that were, patrolling the roads. And these are self-appointed groups. They were patrolling roads and they were looking for Muslims who are, let's say transporting cows. And the cow is considered to be a holy symbol for the Hindus. The cow is worshipped by them. And so they would claim that, such and such Muslim was taking this cow for slaughter or to sell, and therefore would claim that their sentiments were hurt, and would go on to kill this person under this pretext. And, in the world, we think that lynching was a thing of the past. We've heard about it, in the American South way long ago. And we do not associate this primordial form of violence in the contemporary world, but it was spreading like a forest fire in modern day India. And that essentially was why we needed to address this question in filmic terms. Because there was this silence from the government. And of course, as we've read from James Baldwin, he writes about how mobs on the streets, they execute the will of the state. They might be faceless or they can be nameless, but essentially mobs are executing the will of the state. So we wanted to understand the political and the cultural framework that was that was making it possible for people to openly indulge in these form of primordial mob murders. And so along with my co-director, I left for the field, and we had done a lot of research by way of reading what was happening, but it is only your field research that can essentially provide you the story that you want to work on, or the specific story of your film and the narrative of that film. And so we started researching. And the thing with documentary filmmaking is that, we, as filmmakers, the moment we are convinced that a story is relevant and urgent, we want to put it on film. But it's not always that your potential funders are able to see the story. So in many of the films that I've worked on, I've had to often stay ahead of the funding cycle, which essentially is that if you're pitching, for development, and development is quite an under-recognized territory as far as the short form filmmaking goes, because it's almost as if you've been on the field, then well, you might as well have filmed it, and then you might as well have edited it. So so the process of development is as sacred and sacrosanct to the short form as it is for long form. So we thought that we will self-fund this film until the point we have material to show. But we thought we'll just start taking a chance by writing to some funders when we had done some part of the field research, and we thought we had a story. And so Pulitzer was one of the first people we approached. And that was because it's the Pulitzer Center for Crisis Reporting. And there is a difference between an ongoing conflict and that of a crisis that has a link to a particular moment in time. And we knew that we were looking at a crisis in India. So while communalism could have been an ongoing conflict, but because Pulitzer Center funds the crisis reporting, is how we had written our first proposal to Pulitzer. And it was a proposal based on our field research. And we had also tied up with a platform, thereby also fulfilling the other criteria that Pulitzer has, which is that you should have a distribution arm attached. And so we sent this proposal, and a couple of months later, it is rejected. And, speaking about rejection, it sounds all fancy in hindsight. And, you talk about, failing upwards and all those kinds of, pop psychology terms that have come in. But it does not feel nice at all when you're rejected. Because the thing is that for documentary and independent documentary filmmakers, we want to, in the early stages, find at least that one more person who believes in this story. And but we had gotten rejected, and we still, and I'd say that that was an advantage for us, that because we do not need to pay ourselves, we work in a very small team, so we could still persist and continue our field research. And we tried to keep looking for funders, but that process essentially, and we're talking about, let's say, July, August 2018. But by the time we, kept finding the strength to continue to film, and I think, and yeah, I'm sure that for this particular film, we did not have any funding up to the point that we had even finished filming, because it's rare to hear of seed funding on short form documentaries. And we felt that up to the point we have not finished filming, we have not been able to convey our vision to the grantors. And so we thought we will try and put together a rough cut. And by the time we put together a rough cut, we had the original platform that was on board, their programming priorities had changed. And we're talking, let's say, about 6 months from the time that we had been working on it. So while now we had a rough cut that could evoke our story, our motivations, our narrative, our style, our visual and emotional language, we thought we had it. But then by that time we had lost our distributor. But we still thought we